Well, good afternoon. I'm going to start this over. I started a minute ago, but we weren't recording. I'm Rick Reed. I'm the instructor for uh, your course, Business 101, Introduction to Business. And I'm providing a brief overview, which I'm going to post on Campus Web for you to review. You're not required to review this, but I hope you do because it will talk about some of the things we're going to discuss in the course and hopefully answer some questions that you may have in your mind. This course, Business 101, is a foundation course. And by that I mean that many of the, if not all, the business and management courses that you will take in pursuit of your degree uh, build upon this course. And Business 101 covers a wide array of topics that are integral to any business. It's important to know these things. Yes, we're going to talk about concepts in some cases. We're going to talk about theory in some cases. But we're also going to talk about practicality in some cases, especially when we talk about building a business plan. So it provides an overview that are important to the topics of business and also impact business. The key components of this course, at least as far as I'm concerned, and we kind of start out at the beginning of chapter 1, we talk about risk. This risk is not risk that we think about that we buy insurance for automobile insurance or homeowners insurance or renters insurance or anything of that nature. This talks about the risk of an individual wanting to start his or her business. This is chapter 1. Wanting to start his or her business, and he or she takes a risk of using his or her time, talent, and other resources to build a company, and hopefully the company will be viable and will eventually make a profit. And it is a risk because no one knows when they start a business whether it will be successful or not. So that's the risk we talk about here. The risk of your time, the risk of your talent, the risk of your resources to start a business that may or may not wind up making a profit. We're going to learn more about risk when we get to bonus chapter C, and learn how individuals manage risk. That's by buying insurance and doing a few other things. The risk we introduced in chapter 1, as I said, is much different. And it's a risk that we need to think about because many of the students that I've had, I taught this course here for over 10 years. Many of the students that I've had talk about wanting to start a business. And that's a risk. And it's a risky proposition. Risk of getting money to help, a risk of getting resources, risk of finding customers and a market and all sorts of things. So that's kind of what we open the chapter with. Open chapter 1, but actually open the course with. Then we move on in chapter 2 to discussing, for the most part, the three major economic forms of government we have in the world. Capitalism, which we operate under here in the United States, I prefer to call market-based economy. And the reason I do is because for many years, capitalism, oh boy. Well, I apologize. I just realized that I was recording this by phone and not over my computer, so I have to start over. And again, I apologize for that. I want to welcome you to Introduction to Business, Business 101. And as I mentioned earlier, I didn't realize I had my phone connection up and not the computer. You're not required to watch this introduction. I hope that you do, because hopefully I will say some things here that will answer some questions you have in the back of your mind about the course and where the course is going and what we're going to talk about and things of that nature. This is, as I mentioned, excuse me just a second. As I mentioned, this is the foundation course. And what I mean by that is that almost every business course you will take and management course in pursuit of your degree will build upon the concepts and theories that we mentioned here. We're going to talk about a lot of those. And when you move up the ladder, if you will, what we have discussed today, because this is a foundation course, which is broad-based, those courses that you take later will build upon what we've learned here. We are going to learn about some topics that cover a wide range of things that impact businesses. We'll talk about risk, which I'm going to talk about here in just a second. We'll talk about economic systems. We'll talk about ethical and social responsibility. We'll talk about the type of business that you might want to get into. We'll talk about starting a business and developing a business plan. We'll talk about leadership and management and operations. We'll talk about human resource management. We'll talk about motivation. We'll talk about dealing with employees, specifically about unions, but there are concepts in there to talk about all employees. And then we'll move on to marketing and a few other things. And I'm going to retouch on many of these topics as I go through what I have to present here this evening. So think of this Business 101, Introduction to Business, as an overview. And it gives some practicality to things. I hope that you will learn some things in this course, and that other things will reinforce things that you've already learned. The first chapter, it talks about a number of things, but the biggest thing that comes out of the first chapter, at least to me, is risk. Now, we're going to talk about risk more fully when we get to bonus chapter C in week 8. And that's a different type of risk than what I'm going to talk about here and what is really introduced in chapter 1. And that is a risk that an entrepreneur takes, or if we don't even want to call that person an entrepreneur, we want to call that person somebody who wants to begin a startup business. The risk that he or she takes of committing time, talent, and resources to own and operate a business, begin to own and operate a business that may or may never reach profitable status. And a lot of things that they have to do. It's a risk of finding a market. It's a risk of finding customers. It's the risk of having a product or a service that customers either want or need or both. And that's not always easily done. A lot of times people get into business that are Me Too businesses. And what do I mean by that? Well, how many different type of insurance agencies do you see? National ones we know, like Allstate and Progressive and State Farm and many others that I haven't even mentioned here. And people will become agents for independent insurance companies. People will start mom and pop shops. People will start any number of things that are Me Too. And that's not meant to be bad. That's just meant to say that maybe in that particular area, that market is not being served. How many convenience stores do you see on your drive to and from work? Or your commute, maybe you don't drive, maybe you take public transportation. And you'll see one open and you'll say, well, why is somebody opening it? Well, obviously, that person who opened it believes that the market in that general area is not being served. So there's a risk that people take to do that. And again, we're not going to talk about the risk that can be covered by insurance in chapter 1. That's a different type of thing. Here we move on to the economic systems. There's 3 major economic systems in the world today. Capitalism, which is practiced in the United States. I prefer to use the term market-based system. And I do that because capitalism had taken on a negative connotation for many years. And people thought it was bad. Then the other two major systems are socialism and communism. And we'll talk about those, and we'll do some comparison and contrasting of those type things. We're going to learn about global markets. If you paid attention to the stock market late last week and today, you will find that the United States, like every other country in the world, at least a country that is industrialized like we are, or an emerging economy, is tied into the global marketplace. And what we find today in the global marketplace, and especially I'm talking about stock markets, is that there's a great fear that China's economy is rapidly cooling. China's economy has grown exponentially in the last 25 years. It's been experiencing for many years double-digit growth rate. In the United States, we think if our GDP grows 3 or 4% a year, it's a good year. It may even be considered a great year. And here we're talking about China doing double-digit gross domestic product increases year after year after year after year. What we found is that the Chinese, and I, by the way, I'm not a China basher here, so don't take that too far along. What we find is that the Chinese really don't know that much about markets and free markets. A lot of what China does is based upon government intervention. There are a lot of industries in China that are either owned wholly or partially by the government. We don't have that in the United States. Yes, we have utilities like power companies that are not owned by states or by the federal government, but are controlled by them. They're allowed to raise rates if they go into a public commission and things of that nature. They're regulated. We don't own them. We have a lot to do with them, of course, but because due to regulation. And so what we found that out is China's China's currency, the renminbi or the yuan, it's called by both, has been devalued several weeks ago. Some people thought it was a precipitous action on the part of the Chinese. Other people say it was long overdue. And their stock market has not done well. It's lost a huge amount in the last few weeks, of course. And what happens is, because China is the second largest economy in the world, besides being the most populous country in the world, it has a ripple effect on every other economy. And part of the problem that China has is that most of its economy is fueled by exports. Well, those things become limited over time. They have a huge pollution problem and a few other things that need to be curbed. So I don't know what the stock market's doing now. It was down almost 1,000 points right after it opened this morning. So we'll find out about economies and how economies work. And we move to ethical and socially responsible behavior, a big issue today. We consumers want companies to act ethically, and we want them to be socially responsible. And of course, when we say we want companies to act ethically, we're talking about the people that run the companies. A company is a construct, and companies don't run themselves, people run companies. So it's the people that we want to make sure that they're acting ethically, and we demand it today. Do you want to own your own business? What kind of a business do you want to go into? Do you want to be a sole proprietor? You want to go into business with somebody else and form a partnership? If you're large enough, or you think you are, do you want to become a corporation? Do you want to own a franchise? We're going to talk about all those things. And those are different types of business models. We'll move to the next chapter and we'll talk a little bit more about owning a business, and we'll talk a little bit about developing a business plan. I attended a conference in March, business conference in March, at Society for Business Research Conference. And one of the presenters there gave a very interesting paper, and unfortunately I've not been able to get the entire paper. And it said, forget business plans. Entrepreneurs, capitalists, venture capitalists mostly, and other type of lenders don't pay much attention to a business plan. They're more interested in the idea itself than following a business plan. Well, that's pretty nice information, and there probably is some margin of truth to that. But a business plan does a number of other things, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to move to management and leadership. We need to understand that there's a difference between the two. Leaders tend to be visionary thinkers and moving on to the next thought, the next project, where we want to go. We're here today, we want to move to there. Managers are more about stability. Now, one of the issues that has risen in the past few years is that managers have taken on a lower standing as versus leaders. And we need to make sure that we understand that both of these folks are necessary. And we should not compare one against the other. We'll also gain an appreciation of why customer satisfaction is paramount for any company that wants to stay in business. Customers demand quality today, and companies need to make sure that their products and services either meet or exceed what their customers expect. And notice I didn't say want, I said what they expect. Here we're going to turn to different theories of motivation and why human resource management folks and functions are important to any business, regardless of size. And motivation is very interesting. We're going to talk about a number of theories you may have heard. We'll talk about Maslow. We'll talk about Douglas McGregor. We'll talk about Alder. We'll talk about Frederick Hertzberg, with whom you may not have heard. We'll talk about a few other people. And we'll talk about motivation so that we understand motivation, at least to have a rudimentary understanding of motivation. And then also understand that neither you nor I can motivate anybody else. And we can put things in place to help motivate people. But it's the person, he or she has to grab onto that to become motivated. Then we're going to move on to, as I mentioned before, labor relations. And this chapter, excuse me just a second. My mouth is getting a little dry. This chapter presents a history of labor unions in the United States, how they started and formed, and really talks a lot about labor management issues. We're talking here about organized labor unions and management and the relationships that they have. And we're going to learn a lot about that. But there's a lot that's mentioned in there, and I hope that you can extrapolate some of that information and see that it's applicable to companies that don't have unions. Now, you won't find quite the same actions and reactions that are taken in labor management relations in a non-unionized company, but you will find them other places. Chapters 13 through 16 are concerned with marketing, pricing products, distribution of goods, and promotion. And those chapters all are very integrated and very related to each other. So we will cover those, in 1 week. And I don't know that I will be able to complete the lecture in one evening because it is 4 chapters, even though I'm going to reduce the number of PowerPoint slides. At least I'll come back to that in a second. And if I can't, then I'll finish that up the following week and then bring in chapters 17 and 18. Because the last 2 weeks before we get to week 8, which are the bonus chapters, the last 2 weeks, week 6 and week 7, we only cover 2 chapters a week, so we'll be able to take care of that. And I want you to pay attention when we get into that one of the videos, and I'm going to come back to the videos in a moment, but that is about Energizer. The battery company, everybody knows the Energizer Bunny, or at least I hope they do. Give us some kind of an idea of how marketing is done. Chapters 17 and 18 introduce us to accounting. Chapter 17, financial accounting. Chapter 18, managerial accounting. And of course, this course is a precursor. Taking those two the concepts brought out in those 2 chapters are very helpful for you to take. Accounting, financial accounting, ACC 235, and of course ACC 236, managerial accounting, and also Management 350, management of financial resources. And then we'll finish the regular chapters in the text 19 and 20, which discuss securities being stocks and bonds, and then money and the Federal Reserve. So we get some kind of an indication about how money came to be, what it is, what money has to conform to be considered money, and then the Federal Reserve, which of course is the federal banker for the United States. Then we will finish with bonus chapters A, B, and C. I skipped bonus chapter B because that's about information management. I get to some technical aspects that I don't feel very comfortable talking about. And I suggest that if you're interested, you take a couple of our management information systems courses. These 3 chapters, the bonus chapters, are concerned with the legal environment, bonus chapter A, risk, bonus chapter C, and then personal finance, bonus chapter D. Then I want to talk a little bit about the chapter videos. There are 20 videos that are embedded in the course, and you will find them in weeks 1 through 5. Well, weeks 1 through 4, there are 3 associated with lecture notes in chapters 1, 2, and 3, then 4, 5, and 6, up through 12. Week 5 will have video chapters for 13 through 16. Week 6, chapters 17. Week 8, chapters 19 and 20. These videos, some I have used for a number of years, and some are new. By the way, these come from the publisher. I don't choose these videos. Most of them are around 14 minutes, some a little bit less than that. There may be 1 or 2 that extends as long as 16 minutes. But what these videos do is they sort of recapitulate what was in the chapter, but they focus on a company. And they show how the company used the concepts that are presented in the chapter, make use of them to make their business better, to do certain things, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to get to one here, just an Energizer I mentioned before, but then chapter 9, which covers production and operations, uses ball container. Now, many of us may know ball container as ball jar. People use them for home canning. I've never been sure why we call that home canning when we use a glass jar. But the ball, that particular video really points out how this company uses some things that are mentioned about transportation and operations and so on and so forth. The other ones do as well. I just happen to really like the ball container video because maybe I associate with a little bit more than some of the other videos. But they're all good. As I say, some of them are new. I think maybe 30% of them are new, so I have not seen all of them. But they really do a very good job of reinforcing the concepts that are brought out in each individual chapter. Now we're going to talk about that particular assignment and what we want to do as we go along here. So let's talk about course requirements. The first requirement is for you to complete the engagement assignment. It is not difficult. There are 3 simple questions. And the purpose behind it is to assure students are actively engaged in their courses. Engagement assignments are in each and every one of our courses throughout the union's curriculum. And another purpose is because we have to report to the federal government students that are not engaged, because that affects financial aid money. So we ask students to complete the engagement assignment within the first week. As I said, my course has 3 simple questions that you're asked to answer. It is graded. The grade is 5 points, and usually everyone winds up with 5 points. And I say usually, why would someone not wind up with 5 points? Well, I've had people misspell my last name. That's one. And my name is R-E-A-D. Just like you read a book or read the newspaper, and not to be confused with the more common in this country, R-E-E-D. People who will send things in misspelling, grammar errors, and things of that nature, then obviously they would not qualify for entire 5 points. Every week except week 8, a reflection paper is due. Reflection are recurring assignments, weeks 1 through 7. The purpose of a reflection paper is to get you to think more deeply about what you read, and then indicate in the paper what you liked, agreed with, or what you didn't like, disagreed with, and why, based upon your current knowledge and experience. And what we're doing there is we're using this, it follows the Kolb experiential learning model. The Kolb model is posted on the main page. You can find the Kolb model there, but I don't use all of the Kolb model. I want you to do what I just mentioned. What did you read that you liked and why, or what did you agree with and why, based upon your current knowledge and experience? What did you disagree with based upon your current knowledge and experience, and why? And then I want you to tell yourself, and obviously me, what you will do in the future to further your understanding of the material and the concepts and theories associated with it. So you would want to stop and reflect, okay, I've learned this. Now, how am I going to build on that learning? And there is no particular right answer, wrong answer, but you have to be able to say, this is what I'm going to do, and this is why I'm going to do it. And we're asking you to think deeply, not just say, yeah, I'm going to do this, that, and something else, and not think about it. Because when we do things of this nature, there's a consequence. And we want to think about what the consequences are. So we want you to think critically. And employers place a big emphasis on new employees and even older employees, but particularly those entering the workforce or looking for a new job, to be able to think critically and to have this ability to think critically. That is, if you see something and you read something, you're thinking about, well, wait a minute, what does this mean? How is this going to affect me? How is this going to affect other people? We can go on to the internet, for instance, and we can find a lot of things on the internet. And some people say, well, gee, that's a fact. When the case may be, it's not a fact. So we need you to think about this. What does it mean? What does it entail? What do I have to do about it? What does it mean to me? What does it mean to people who work for me? What would it mean for my employer? You want to think about that, and that's the same. And then we ask you to view the videos. The videos are embedded in each week. You'll find them right after the lecture notes for each week. And there's a little sort of sideways arrow. Click on the arrow, you can view the video. And then do a critical review of the video. Now, the reflection papers are to be uploaded to the coursework assignments page. But the videos, your critical review of the videos, is to be uploaded to the forum section. And then you're to respond to another student's post. So we are going to, with the videos, and the next thing I'm getting to, going to create a learning community. We're going to learn from each other. And hopefully we'll be able to take some of the things that we've learned and use them later in life. So that's what you're going to do with each video. And then we have a discussion question for each week. Those are also to be uploaded to the forum section. And that will be a graded question that will be graded. And we ask you to respond to that, and then again to respond to another student's post. Again, the purpose is to create a learning community so we can learn from these discussion questions. Discussion questions are taken from the text. So we're not coming up with anything that you haven't read, anything that you should have. We're not coming up with anything that you should have. Let me say that differently. We're coming up with things that you should have learned through your reading. So we're not necessarily introducing other things, but we are introducing things that are critical for us to think about. There's not one for every chapter. There's one for each block of chapters. So there's 8 discussion questions. And then, as I have mentioned to each of you, I will conduct an audio and a video lecture each Monday beginning at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I realize that many of you are not, or some of you may not be in the Eastern Time zone. But I do hope that if you have the opportunity, you can log into these. I will send you a link so that you'll be able to log in and follow along with the video, with the lecture. The lectures will be recorded and uploaded to Campus Web, and they'll also be available to you on YouTube. And I will provide links to the YouTube probably the day after we have concluded the lecture. Many times I can get the lectures uploaded the same day so that you could start looking at them at, say, 8 or 9 o'clock at night if you wished. And again, the lectures will be recorded, so you'll be able to get them at your convenience. They will be in each week, and I will give you, I will notify you where they're located. Normally, they'll be located at the end of the lecture notes for that particular week. Again, lecture notes are already posted on Campus Web. Now, as I mentioned, when I do these videos, do the audio and video lectures, I use PowerPoint slides. And what I have found is that there are numerous PowerPoint slides. And if I use every PowerPoint slide and talk to every PowerPoint slide, sometimes we go a little long. And even though I take a break in between, chapters that maybe gets a little tedious for everybody, and it's difficult to follow along with the PowerPoint slide and then someone talking at the same time. So I'm going to not eliminate PowerPoint slides, but I'm not going to use every PowerPoint slide to talk to. And what I mentioned to you is this, is that I will upload all the PowerPoint slides, but if you're here live or you're not here live, don't pay so much attention. You do one of two things. You can either pay attention to the PowerPoint slide or pay attention to what I have to say. But having it recorded, you can go back and see what's there, that what you may have missed, what you didn't understand. So when I'm finished with the lecture, the PowerPoint slides, as well as the audio portion of what I'm saying, will be uploaded to Campus Web, and you'll be able to access it at your convenience. I want to mention one last thing before I conclude this approximately half an hour introduction, and that is about your assignments. Assignments are due at the time and date posted. I extend it to, by the way, all Campus Web times are Eastern time. So I make the assignment due as late as possible, 11:50, and those have to be uploaded by that time. Otherwise, if you're going into the assignments coursework page after 11:50, you'll be locked out. You'll not be able to upload the assignment. That doesn't work the same way for the forums section because I have not closed out the forums section. The reason I haven't closed out the forums section is often I like to ask follow-up questions. And again, that helps us create a learning community. So the forum section, well, I do want I do ask that the forum posts be submitted at the time they're supposed to be submitted. There was no cutoff time to the forum. And so we'll be able to continue that. It also gives you the opportunity to ask questions of me without having to go through email, so all of your peers can see those questions. I do ask if you're going to be late with assignments that you let me know about that. That way I can make adjustments and I'm not scrambling after you finding out why assignments haven't been submitted and what the issue is and a few other things. Each of us in this course is an adult. And so adults should take it upon themselves to notify someone when there's an issue. I'll notify you if I'm going to be late responding to you. I try to respond to everybody within 48 hours. It's not always possible because I teach another course as well. So I try to make sure I get some things responded to within 48 hours and then don't extend anything past 72 hours. But if I can respond within 48 hours, I will. If I'm going to be late, I'll let you know. So that's what I'm asking. If you're going to be late, please let me know so I can make adjustments as are needed. Well, I think that you'll get a lot out of this course. And I think it's going to be very beneficial. I've taught this course, I said, here for over 10 years. I've actually taught the course for about 15 years, and at least one other place before I came here. I've used the same text over a period of years, obviously newer editions, but I think that it's a very useful text. It's a very useful user-friendly text, and I think that you will enjoy it. So I apologize for my technical issues early on. I didn't realize I was on the phone and not through the computer, and I will have this uploaded for you before I leave here this evening. So I thank you for your attention. I look forward to working with each of you. And again, the first lecture will be next Monday. So thank you very much and good evening.